How do you retire by the time that you're 30 years old? There's two methods that I want you to think about. The first method, I'll give you kind of the simple way. And then the second method, I'll give you the harder way of actually doing this. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Masek. I'm an associate professor of innovation, strategy, and entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. All right, so how do you actually retire by the time that you are 30? I am not retired right now. I'm 42 years old. So I am doing the second plan. And I want you to hang on and sort of pay attention to what I'm going to say. The first plan is to find a career that brings in a great big boatload of money instantly and then live in a tent perhaps for the rest of your life. So what's going to happen is that for the first 10 years, you need to save up a big chunk of money, probably about $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 or more. That's within North America. It's going to be different in different countries, but generally somewhere around that amount. And then from there, you can live in a really, really tiny, modest home. Probably if you have about $500,000, you can live for the rest of your career, for the rest of your life off of that. And so the way that you live off of that is the interest that is generated. So the interest you're going to make is about 10% if you do that on average in the stock market. And that's where I want you to think about, right? So 10% on average of $500,000 is about $50,000 a year. Now, living off of $50,000 a year, you really, really need to live super, super modestly, because that's going to have to be the way that you're going to live 30 years from now, 40 years from now. So it's not going to be really comfortable. And initially, $50,000 seems like, okay, it's kind of modest. This is 2023, it's going to be a really modest income. And you're going to have to live off of that. But 30 years from now, that's not going to be a lot of money. So it's going to be really, really difficult. And that's why I recommend just living off a tent. You can actually live in a tent and then build up from there, build up the amount of that big lump sum that you actually have. So for me, those two combinations, right? Having a huge lump sum at the beginning, and then after that, having a reduced amount that you're bringing in is really, really the answer if you want to do the first sort of way of doing that. For me, that doesn't seem comfortable. And it's probably not realistic for two reasons. The first one is it's impossible to find a job that's non-scammy that is going to provide that much amount of money. There's maybe one way that you can probably do this to provide, and it's actually a pretty surefire way, is get a heavy industry, heavy construction job in some sort of field like that, whether it is diamond mining or something like that, but not do that in North America. Go do that in some war-torn country where it's very, very dangerous to actually do that. And if you do that, you're probably going to be making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. Now, another career you might be thinking about is like, hey, why not do software programming or something along those lines? Well, the problem is it takes a great deal of time to get up to that skill where you're making that much amount of money. You're probably going to be 27, 28, 29, if you're lucky to be making an income like that in that particular career. And that's just not long enough to have that great big lump sum of money by the time you're 30. So, and then the second thing is, it takes a really unusual person to live like that, to live in a tent, to live really modestly. It's really unusual, and it's just behaviorally not possible for most people. In the culture that we live in and being a normal functioning human being, that's not possible. So what is the second option? The second option is to begin retirement by the time that you've actually started. When you're 25 years old, you're thinking about that you are actually going to retire and that you're going to stop this career. I think it seems silly to be in a career such that you have to work forever, right? So what you want to do is plan the fact that, hey, I'm going to have a limited amount of time in this particular career. You can have a sustained period, right? Whatever that period is, maybe you pick 60 or maybe you pick 50, right? Is when you're actually going to retire. And when you are 20 years old or 25 years old, when you start working, that's when you start planning for it, right? So by the time that you are in your 40s and you start thinking about retirement, that's already too late. But here's the thing, it's not too late to start, right? So you can build up a great deal of money at that point and do okay, but it's going to take you longer to get there. So if you want to retire early and do the things that you're thinking about, living a really nice life, you have to start extremely young. And as soon as you start working, the very first paycheck that you get, you take 10 to 20%, 15% seems like a good number. That's what we target. We probably actually do a more of everything that we bring in, and then we save that. We put that away. So for us, we do index funds and just long-term mutual funds that have been around for a long, long time. And that's all we do, right? There's a really basic functionality. And thinking about, not only that, but minimizing the cost that you're going to experience by having insurances, health insurance, life insurance, those kind of things. So sort of really boring things and, a basic will and just really boring stuff. But you do that for 30 years. You do that for 40 years, right? You do that for an X number of time. So 20 years is getting a little on the short side by the time that you've actually built up a career, right? 20 years. So if you started at 40 or 25 and then you went until you were 45, that's still a bit short in terms of doing this. But if you really, really want to do it, you can do it, right? You're just going to have a higher savings rate, probably at about 25% of everything that you bring in. But then you also need a pretty good income as well, right? So it's only for a certain group of people that can actually do that and have that sort of sustained life. But for most people, almost everybody, you can do this if your target is, say, 60 years old and do okay. And so this is where you start thinking, okay, at the age when you start, I'm going to start planning for retirement. And the sooner that you actually get this done, the quicker you can retire. If you start right away in a normal functioning, normal career path that people are making normal amounts of money, and you start saving that, say you make $50,000 a year, and then you save 15% of everything that you make, that's $6,000 a year, or a little more than, $7,500 a year. And you do that with a compounding interest for 10% per year. By the time that you're in your mid 50s, excuse me, you actually have a large sum of money that's sitting there that can sustain you for a long time. Now I know this is why it's hard. You have to do this for such a long period of time that we all get messed up with it. We all kind of lose faith when lots of things happen. But that's where you have to sort of have that, my goal is to have this sort of nice retirement. I think about it from the get-go. And that's what gives you kind of that gumption to keep going, where you don't stop, right? You think about like, hey, what is my preferred way of living by the time I'm actually there? And that's why it's really hard to do this, is you have to think so far in advance. And lots of things change, life changes, but you still think really crazy far in advance to actually get there. And it's that self-regulation that you have to get you there that allows you to have that nice life. So in my mind, I'm already retired. Like, I'm not working, right? And like, I'm thinking about how do I set up my life so that I don't have to work and do all the things that I do, but I can choose to work, right? Like, there's a difference where you choose to do something compared to I have to do something. So I want you to start thinking about that. And what's going to happen, it's going to feel really weird. And people are going to look at you sideways like, wow, like you've done this, or I feel really uncomfortable talking about some of the, financial decisions that because we lived very modestly on what we actually, brought in for such an extended period of time that we did start saving a significant amount of money and doing okay, right? And that's where I want you to sort of think about these things, is looking at things that you can start working on and reducing the amount of expenses that you have. And you just do that for such a long time, when you'll experience all these really cool events, but you can't really tell anybody because it is awkward, right? Because nobody else is sort of playing that game. So that's where you're just kind of being quiet with what you're doing, but you still get there, right? You have that sort of long-term goal in mind. And if you want to accelerate it, right? So you want to get to, by the time that you're 45, I mean, you got to live really, really poorly, but that's the sacrifice you have to do. That's what you have to do to actually get there. And by the time you're 45, you can actually do it it's in North America, you should be able to do it. And this would require you not to buy a car. You would ride your bike everywhere. You would live in a very modest home. And you would have a decent income, right? Like a decent income being like basically a union job at some place or better, right? So if you're making $60,000 a year or better, it's possible to actually do this. If you look at the financial calculations, you can do that. It's not easy and it's going to be tough, but you can actually do that. And you just have to be modest about it. And you have to have a crazy modest life for an extended period of time. It's super hard to do, but that's how you actually get there. So I choose option 2. My mind, I am not working right now, right? Like I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking about, I'm going to retire. I don't want to do this forever. So how do I actually get there to live and have a nice life for the rest of my life? All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.